Hoş geldiniz diyorum tekrar herkese. Avrupa Dayanışma Programı kapsamında Salt Gençlik Derneği koordinasyonunda yürütülen Türkiye Dışişleri Bakanlığı, Avrupa Birliği Başkanlığı, Türkiye Ulusal Ajansı tarafından desteklenen toplum medyası ile iklim değişikliğine Durde projemizin bir konu, bir konuk etkinliğinde bugün Avrupa Birliği Türkiye Delegasyonu Başkanı ve Büyükelçi Sayın Nicolaus Meyer Landrut'u konuk ediyoruz ve Sayın Büyükelçi hoş geldiniz demek istiyorum.
Thank you.
Ve hemen sorularla devam ediyorum. İlk olarak şunu sormak istiyoruz Sayın Büyükelçi. Avrupa Birliği'nin iklim değişikliğiyle mücadele çalışmalarını...
Thank you very much for your invitation. Thank you very much for this possibility to exchange. This is an very important issue, and it's an important issue which actually affects everybody, but I think which affects the younger generation even more than the older generation. You will have to live in this world, and your children and your grandchildren. So it's a really important issue. The European Union has started over the last years to modernize and transform its economy to reduce CO2 emissions. We had set already some time ago targets for 2020, 2030, and so on. But with the time and with the heating of the Earth actually getting worse, and people recognizing that perhaps what had been initially envisaged was not enough, the European Union has over the last years continuously made its objectives more ambitious. And we are now at a stage where the European Union has, on the proposal of the Commission and agreed by member states in December, agreed to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by 2030. And that is an overall objective to be CO2 neutral by 2050 or mid-century. Is it 49 or 51? We don't know, but the objective is mid-century. This will require also within the European Union to take additional measures. For the time being, we have a relatively developed emission trading system. I think it's one of the most developed markets on this area, but we also have sectors in the European Union which are at this stage not covered by the market mechanism, and where we try to support and help member states to do the necessary measures to also help to reach these goals. So there's these objectives create a huge pressure, wanted pressure, but also objective for the EU internally. This is one side of the exercise. The second side of the exercise is that the European Union has also been advocating this externally. We have been among those who have been working towards an agreement in Paris in 2015. We are also one of the largest trading partners, so also our trade agreements will help us to try to have these issues being taken into account by our trading partners, because the European Union knows that, of course, we are part of emissions, we are part of the problem, but the European Union with its reductions cannot solve the problem alone. We will need to have a wider efforts around the world, but we want to and remain to be committed to be among the leading actors in climate change. Perhaps I leave it at this for the first question. Thank you very much.
Devamında ben şunu sormak istiyorum size. Avrupa Yeşil Anlaşması nedir? Sizin perspektifinizden önemi hakkında bize neler söyleyebilirsiniz?
What we call Green Deal now, and this is, I think, very important to understand, is more than a climate or environment policy. Green Deal is at the heart of the European economic strategy for the years and decades to come, and is at the heart of also the economic recovery we think we all have to face now after the pandemic. And we want to make this recovery an opportunity to build, as we say, build back better, and put climate change and environment issues at the center of this economic recovery program. So it's not as it might have been 20 years ago. We have an economic policy and then we do a bit of environment policy. No, this is now the center around which economic development has to be thought. We want to have, as I said, want to be neutral on emissions in 2050, and that means that we have to decouple the economic growth from the use of emissions and from the use of fossil fuels and so on. So this is a very important change in the overall economy. Now, how do we do? This is the objective. The objective as such is not enough. You will find that all European policies in all different areas from now on will try to be organized in a way that they contribute to this objective. And this goes for the supply of clean and affordable energy. This goes for mobility and transport. This goes for circular economy in terms of reducing waste. This very important dimension is energy and resource efficiency. I think we all can do a lot to reduce consumption of energy by thinking more in terms of resource efficiency. But it's also what will be the mobility of tomorrow? How do we want to expand environmental friendly food systems? What do we do to preserve biodiversity? And so on and so on. So you will find elements of this policy in every sectoral policy which try in their combination to help Europe attain this objective. And only if the public sector, European level, member states try to organize this in such a way, we will have the other actors, private industry and citizens, buy into it. So we need, in the end, we will need all three. We will need public actors to drive this forward with objectives, with an environment which makes it possible, also with investment. But we will also need a private sector which needs to understand that the future of industry is clean energy, is clean production procedures and so on. But we also need the wider public to understand that this is something which is not only a cost, but this is something which is for their benefit and in which they also have to buy in. So if producers, consumers, and states understand that this is the priority of the next years, and we organize our policies in every area around this objective, I think we might succeed.
Sayın Büyükelçi, benim dışında tabii gençlerin de size soruları var. Onların sorularını da almak istiyorum ben. Bu arada Göktuğ'yla devam edebiliriz. Göktuğ'yla başlayalım.
Merhaba Sayın Büyükelçi. Öncelikle sizinle tanışmak gerçekten büyük bir şeref. Hoş geldiniz. Ben size şunu sormak istiyorum. Çok sayıda ülke dünya çapında, Amerika olsun, Çin olsun, çevre kirliliğini ve karbon salımlarını azaltmak için çalışmalar yapıyor ve geri dönüşümü arttırmak için. Mesela Çin 2060 yılına kadar karbon nötr olacağını söyledi. Peki Avrupa Birliği'nin bu konudaki çalışmaları tam olarak nedir? Çevre kirliliği ve karbon salımını azaltmak açısından.
Well, I think we are, how can I say, when the European Union announced its objective, the Commission in 2019, that the objective should be to be carbon neutral by 2050, many people around the world were saying, first of all, Europe cannot save the planet alone, and secondly, it will not suffice if it's only Europe which is doing it. So we see right now that actually Europe, having defined a very high level of ambition, that this has led to a situation where other major economies follow suit. You referred to China. it's 2060, we have said 2050, but let's say it's still mid-century, and it's a huge economy, so it is very, very important. We have seen in the United States that the new Biden administration, practically one of the first decisions the new president took was to say he will come back to this, to the climate agreement and make this a priority of American policy. So we see more and more also big economies buying into this agenda. And then it will be important that when we do this, that we also make sure that we do not create a system in which there is what we call carbon leakage. That means that if the price for carbon is higher in one region or in one market, that people shift their production to a market where the carbon price is lower, where they can produce with more carbon emissions, but at a lesser price, and then export their products to the areas where the carbon price is higher. So we need to make sure that also in our trade policies, we adopt approaches which make sure that the targets and the objectives fixed in those countries which want to make this happen are not circumvented by production at lower prices, but with higher emissions in third countries. Because in the end, everybody will have to make an effort. And perhaps I can add this. It looks at this stage as if it is making an effort. But the industry which is investing today in clean production, in green products, will be tomorrow the market leaders. They will be those who will have the products, who will allow them to have more market shares. Those who think that they can sit it out and wait and continue to produce as they produce today because it's less expensive to change now, will be those who over time will lose market shares. So we have to make clear to everybody that if you want to be competitive, if you want to be in the forefront of the markets, if you want to conquer new markets in the coming years, you will have to have products and production methods which are green, which are clean, and which produce products which contribute to the reduction of emissions.
Baktığımız zaman örneğin İsveç ve Avusturya gibi ülkeler elektrik ihtiyaçlarını büyük oranda yenilenebilir kaynaklardan elde ediyorlar. Ama bu ülkelerin yanında Malta, Macaristan, Polonya gibi ülkelerin ise bu kaynakları kullanma payları daha düşük. Peki Avrupa Birliği'ne üye ülkeler yenilenebilir enerji süreci için neler yapıyorlar? Bunun yaygınlaşması için hangi adımlar atıldı?
Well, there are several dimensions to this question. First of all, in the European Union, fundamentally, member states are free in the choice of their energy mix. There is no European decision on what is the energy mix. So what can we do to support renewables? Of course, they need to be supported, and that's what we are doing. Also at the national level, and there the schemes to support the expansion of renewables vary from one country to the other, and we have to acknowledge that. This will not go away immediately. But what we also do, we have burden sharing decisions among member states in which we try to support those who have a longer way to get away from energy production with fossil energy, like Poland, that they get more of a support, that we perhaps accept that it takes a bit longer, but that we buy them into this strategy as well. And I mean, it might take a bit longer, but we understand that without support from the European Union, without support, it will be difficult. But even in these countries, I come back to my point of energy efficiency. You can already do a lot in reducing the production of energy, of fossil energy, if you reduce the consumption of energy. and then the things come together. So it's expansion of renewable energy, it is energy efficiency, and it is support for those countries to allow them in their specific setup to get out of fossil energy production as fast as possible.
Sayın Büyükelçi, Ayşe'nin size bir sorusu olacak.
Merhaba Sayın Büyükelçi. Bu toplantıda olmak benim için de çok büyük bir mutluluk. Benim sorum, Avrupa Birliği iklim değişikliği politikası her ülkede aynı şekilde mi sürüyor? Teşekkür ederim.
Well, the answer is no, because the conditions in member states are different. But on the other hand, yes, we share the same objectives and we have subscribed to the same objectives. And so the path of every member state to contribute to attaining this objective must be compatible with the situation from where the country is coming. And so here we have some systems, for example, the emission trading system, which cuts across the countries and which is affecting everybody in the same way. But we also have sectors like transport, which are not covered by the emission trading scheme. And here we do support and member states themselves have to develop their strategies, how their transport sector can also contribute to the reduction of emissions. So what you have to understand is that the European Union has a common objective, will put in place common policies at the European level, as I described in the beginning, in the European policy areas, has a European emission trading system for some sectors, but will also help and support member states in their national policies there where the reduction of CO2 emission has to be reached through national policies. And the pathway of each country will depend, of course, on its starting point. And the starting points as well in the energy mix, but also in transportation, size of the country, and so on, are not the same. So we will need to bring these different European and national efforts together to reach together the common objective.
Burasının sorusuyla devam ediyoruz.
Öncelikle hoş geldiniz Sayın Büyükelçim. Bize vakit ayırdığınız için çok teşekkür ederim. İzninizle benim de bir sorum olacaktı size. Sizce gençlerin iklim değişikliği konusundaki önemi ve pozisyonu nedir? Çok teşekkürler.
Well, as I said in the beginning, you are the ones who will face the consequences of climate change longer than we. I'm 61 or almost 61, so I can, it's foreseeable, it's a foreseeable end. I don't know when, but it's shorter. So actually we have today to take the policy decisions which are relevant for your entire lives. And I think it is very important that the youth is articulated about these issues, that the youth explains to decision makers today, this is our future. This is our planet, and we want to have this planet in a way that we can live on it and have, also our children. But there is not only, if I may say so, not only the question of being a hugely important pressure group in this issue, but there's also an element of adapting your own behavior to the needs of the future. Because we come back to the consumers also being part of the story. So if the message of the youth will be less convincing if the youth continues to behave as if there was no climate change, but asks for measures to reduce climate change. So, and that's both dimensions are very, very important to bring the message across.
Anıl, söz sende.
Merhaba Sayın Büyükelçi. Öncelikle biz gençlerin sesine kulak verdiğiniz için çok teşekkür ederim. Size sorum ise şu. İklim değişikliği ile mücadele konusunda farkındalık yaratmak açısından medya ve sosyal medyanın önemi sizce nedir? Teşekkür ederim.
Well, you see, extremely powerful in public opinion, in convincing people, in the end, are pictures. If you get a 5-page report with the highest quality of scientific research, and you put this somewhere on social media, you will probably not create a lot of awareness. And it is all is true. But where awareness, if you speak about awareness, comes from is when people see and feel what climate change means today. And here media and social media and the individual experiences people are making are very powerful messages. When you see that water reserves are going down, when you see that rain is stopping and agriculture is getting more and more difficult because of drought, when you see that on the other hand, you have floods and other weather phenomena which reinforce. So I think the awareness of people, the wider public, on the consequences of climate change comes through their personal experience or them realizing through pictures and films. And so if you want to raise awareness on these things, produce little films, produce images, and combine that with the key message. Text alone is not good enough anymore.
Erasmus'un yeni 2021-2027 döneminin daha kapsayıcı, dijital ve daha yeşil olacağı açıklandı Sayın Büyükelçi. Biz burada şunu çok merak ediyoruz. Daha yeşil neyi ifade ediyor ve neyi kapsıyor?
Me too. I think we're still pretty much at the beginning of putting these new programs in place. But of course, you have vocational trainings which deal more with trainings which evolve around sustainability, which help people to learn in certain sectors how to deal with the consequences of climate change. So I would think that one should include in these exchange programs sufficient number of training programs in which the issue of climate change, the consequences of climate change, the effect on specific professions is actually a part of the training. And then the youth from the different countries participating in Erasmus Plus can exchange, can see how it is done in other countries, what do they learn, and perhaps come back with some experience, with some best practice, and share that in their home country with their fellow students and teachers.
Avrupa Birliği ve Türkiye arasında çevrenin korunması ve iklim değişikliğiyle mücadele için hangi ortak çalışmalar yapılıyor? Öncelikle yapılıyor mu? Yapılıyorsa hangi çalışmalar yapılıyor ve bizim paydaşlarımız kimler bu çerçevede?
In the programs we are conducting together with the Turkish partners, there are many dimensions which address also this question. Let me take three examples. We have what we call the pre-accession programs, financial assistance, and in these programs will now be renewed because every 7 years we have a new financial period for which we redefine our policies and our regulations on which we do this cooperation. And the new cooperation, financial cooperation and pre-accession with candidate countries will be organized around individual, what we call windows, so thematic areas on which we want to cooperate. And climate change, Green Deal, environment protection is one of the key areas in which we want to cooperate with candidate countries on specific projects in terms of financial cooperation. We already support a number of projects in the energy, in transport, in renewables, but also in solid and waste water management, biofuels, and so on. So there are many, many projects we are already conducting, but we will focus even more this part of our cooperation on these issues. Secondly, also in the cooperation which we are conducting with Turkey in the context of refugee assistance, we do a number of projects which try to increase the capacity of municipal infrastructure, because you have cities in this country who have had a huge influx of people, which puts municipal infrastructure under stress. And also in this area of municipal infrastructure, of course, it's schools, of course, it's help in the health sector, but it's also a lot of waste management, wastewater management, which we try to have projects which are sustainable, which reduce waste, which produce energy through bioenergy, and help at the same time the host and the refugee community through better municipal services, but which also contribute to a more sustainable model. And a third dimension, which is important, Turkey has been part for a number of years in the European research program, Horizon 2020, or whatever the names change every 7 years. It's the research program. And in this research area, of course, research related to new technologies, to climate-friendly technologies, to new energy sources is one of the areas of cooperation. So you see that in the different areas, from pre-accession to refugee assistance to research cooperation, we always come back also to the question of how we can cooperate in terms of mitigating the effects of climate change.
Bir diğer soru Mehmet'ten.
Öncelikle Sayın Büyükelçimize hoş geldiniz demek istiyorum ve bugün burada bizlerle olduğu için çok da teşekkürlerimi iletmek istiyorum. Benim sorum şu şekilde: Türkiye ve Avrupa Birliği arasında yürütülen Erasmus Plus Avrupa Dayanışma Programı gibi programların 2021 ve 2027 olarak adlandırılan yeni dönemde çevre, iklim değişikliği ve diğer benzer başlıklarda yürütülecek ya da yürütülmesi planlanan projelerde bu konuların özellikle üzerinde durulması gerektiğini düşünüyor musunuz? Teşekkür ediyorum.
The answer is yes. Honestly, I think that we are all now looking at this pandemic as being a huge challenge and stress for all of us, for young people, for older people. We can't live as we want to live. We can't work as we want to work. We can't travel as we want to travel. But I'm sure that the challenges from climate change are much more fundamental for this generation than the pandemic. The pandemic, we will manage. It will be hard and it will take time, and we'll get vaccinated and we'll get vaccinated again, and we still have people who get infected, but we will probably have less pressure on hospitals and fatalities. But climate change is a much more fundamental issue, which concerns everybody and which concerns every sector. And I think what I tried to say from the beginning is climate change is not a luxury anymore. It's not an environment policy which you can do if you have the money to do it. It's not a luxury. It is the center of everything. If we want to have this planet to be a lively place and a nice place for you and for the next generations, we have to constantly incorporate the climate protection dimension, the reduction of CO2 emissions in all dimensions of our work, life, and international relations. So yes, this must be part of everything.
Sayın Büyükelçi, iklim değişikliğine ilişkin konuştuklarımızın dışında benim ve genç arkadaşlarımın çok merak ettiği 2 soru var. Sizin görüşlerinizi de almak istiyoruz. İlk sorunun cevabını ben çok merak ediyorum bir akademisyen olarak. Türkiye'de üniversite öğrencilerinin, gençlerin Erasmus'a ilgisi gerçekten çok fazla, çok yoğun. Hepimiz üniversite bu süreçlerden geçiyoruz. Sizin ülkeniz olan Almanya'da durum nedir? Gençlerin Erasmus'a olan bakışı, ilgisi?
Erasmus is a huge success. It's in the younger generation something which everybody in the university is, it becomes a natural feature of your academic training. When I was studying at the university, Erasmus didn't exist. So I envy you, all of you. I had at that time a very complicated thing to organize so that I could spend 6 months at a university in Spain. But this was completely exceptional, and it took time to organize. There was no recognition of you were doing there. You did it because you wanted to do it, because you wanted to learn about another country, another culture, and meet other people. Today, it's part of for Germans, for French, for Swedes. It's part of a natural aspiration for students. So this is really something which is very important, and it creates at a moment in your life the possibility to learn about another country, to reflect also on your own country, to see how things work differently in another country. So this exchange is very important, and we are coming to what we call a generation Erasmus. We now have many mixed couples. Erasmus leads to cross-country marriages, or if it's not marriages, but life communities. So that's very interesting and important. The only point I'm a bit concerned about, and this is why Erasmus Plus is so important, that we need to make this exchange open to all levels of professional training also. It must not be a privilege for those who have the highest level of education. We must make this an offer to those who also have are in different forms of professional training. And they appreciate and they learn as much as, somebody learning cooking will appreciate as much as somebody who is studying law. We should not make a distinction. And this is what we try with Erasmus Plus. We try to extend it to as many professional trainings as possible.
Son bir sorumuz daha olacak. Eylül ayından beri Türkiye'desiniz Sayın Büyükelçi ve Türkiye ile ilgili ilk izlenimlerinizi, görüşlerinizi bizimle paylaşır mısınız?
Well, I'm just at the beginning. Turkey is a very fascinating country, a very rich country. I'm very much appreciate meeting people in this country, traveling in this country, seeing how different the provinces are, how different the kitchen is from one province to the other, how different also the understandings are of certain issues. So the richness and the variety, the cultural heritage of this country is hugely fascinating. And I think also your exchange programs and other exchange programs are very, very important to bring this also diversity and richness of this country to be better known across Europe.
Birlikte çok keyifli, dolu, bilgi yüklü bir 40 dakika geçirdik. Herkese ben çok teşekkür ediyorum ama ayrı tekrar teşekkür etmek isterim. Toplum medyası ile iklim değişikliğine dur de projemize göstermiş oldukları ilgi ve desteklerinden ötürü öncelikli olarak Avrupa Birliği ve Türkiye Delegasyonu Başkanı ve Büyükelçi Sayın Nicolaus Meyer Landrut'a çok teşekkür etmek istiyoruz. İyi ki geldiniz, bizimle birlikte oldunuz ve tabii nezdinde tüm iletişim ekibine teşekkür ediyoruz. Ankara Avrupa Birliği Bilgi Merkezi'ne, Türkiye Odalar ve Borsalar ve koordinatör Sayın Merih Güney'e çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Bunun dışında tabii ki maddi desteği için Türkiye Ulusal Ajansı'na teşekkür ediyoruz. Çünkü bu projenin başlangıcı ve devamlılığında onlar en büyük desteği gençlerimize verdiler. Ve iklim değişikliğine ilişkin yeni projelerin üretilmesi hem bizim adımıza, Türkiye adına hem Avrupa Birliği ile olan ilişkilerimiz adına son derece önemli diye düşünüyorum. Ve tekrar Sayın Büyükelçi'ye bizlerle birlikte olduğu vakit ayırdığı için çok teşekkür ediyorum.
Well, thank you very much. It was a real pleasure. And I hope next time I can meet you somewhere around the table and not only on the screen.
Biz de o günü keyifle bekliyor olacağız sizinle bir arada olabilmek için. Tekrar çok teşekkür ediyorum.
Bye.
Ve hepinize keyifli bir gün diliyorum. Görüşmek üzere.
Thank you very much.